Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Live Well podcast. I am excited to have another episode for you. And today we are diving into becoming a match for wealth. So, to become a match for wealth, it's very important to understand where did it come from, right? What really set that default for a match for wealth? What set the default programming? And so obviously we have to rewind all the way back to childhood. And so what happens is when you are really young, your brain exists in a different brainwave state. So from 0 to 2 years old, your brain exists in what is called delta waves. And then from 2 years old to 7 years old, it exists in what is called theta waves. And so in these two different brain waves, your brain is highly suggestible. Your brain is highly programmable. So if you haven't heard it before, this is why little kids are like sponges. This is also why you may have heard that, when you meditate or you listen to binaural beats that are delta or theta, right? You're getting into that suggestible state for your subconscious. Thing is that when you were younger, you are just existing in that state. So whereas as an adult, you're very much in alpha state, and it's a state you have to try to get into delta, you have to try to get into theta. When you are young, right? When you're 0 to 2 and then 2 to 7, you're 24/7, you're in that state, right? Your brain is operating in either delta or theta in that sponge, highly suggestible. This is where your subconscious is forming. This is where your ego is forming. And so anything, right? Anything that's said to you, anything that's modeled to you, anything that you observe, you take on as truth and you decide that that is how it works, right? So whatever you learn about wealth, whatever you learn about money, you file that away in your filing system without challenging it, without deciding if it's true or not. Because at that age, those parts of your brain haven't formed yet. They haven't developed yet. The parts that are going to analyze of like, is this true? Don't exist. You don't have that capacity yet. So when you're young, you just take everything that happens of like, this is true, this must be true, this is how money works, this is how wealth works, this is how like mom and dad says it works, this is how aunt says it works, this is how society says it works, you're just picking it up, and that becomes a lens through which you view the world. And so this is really important, and very, very important if you have little ones at home and you're a parent, to really watch what you say, yes, about money and wealth, but also about everything, because they are literally picking you up and, exactly what you're feeling. But is also, what they are feeling from you in terms of a nervous system response. So it's not just what you say on the outside or what you observed, it's what you experienced, right? And especially little kids, they experience a lot of energy, right? They can feel beyond like your happy face. They know what's going on internally. So I also want you to think about, you could be like, money is an overflow. But like if internally you're dysregulated, if internally your nervous system is freaking out, the kid is picking up the internal state more than the external if they're not a match, right? If your external matches your internal, they'll pick up both. But if there's an incongruency, they're going to pick up the truth. They're going to be like, her energy feels off about that. That must be true. And so when we really start to peel back these layers and we really start to understand of like, oh, okay, this is what set my current thermostat when it comes to wealth and money, then we can start to change it, right? But first we have to understand it, because this wired your nervous system. And unless you change these wirings, right, it doesn't matter what you do consciously as an adult, because your subconscious is being like, well, no, that's not true, because on June 9th in like 1994, we learned that money is hard. We learned that in order to make lots of money, you have to be tired, you have to be exhausted, right? Maybe mom and dad worked a lot. Maybe they weren't home. Maybe you saw there was lots of fights with money. Maybe you saw that, money cost them their peace or their happiness or their marriage. Maybe they would yell at each other about money. Or, maybe there was lots of money, but your parents weren't happy. Then your subconscious is going to associate, oh, money means not happy, because we have lots of money, but mom and dad aren't happy. So your brain then learns that money will make me unhappy. So what does your nervous system do? It's going to try to protect you from all of this. It's going to say, well, I don't want to be like that, so I'm going to protect myself from money. I'm going to hold money somewhere outside of me. I'm going to separate myself from money, because if I can do that, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be safe, right? Because money is going to cause problems. Money is going to cause this. Money is going to cause that. It can even be mom, dad, or whoever was around you, whatever you picked up, their views about people with money, right? It could be they frowned around, they made judgments. They said nobody should have that amount of money. They must have done something bad. Or if you make that amount of money, like you're sneaky, or like you're somehow conniving, or you're breaking the law, you're somehow bad. Your system as a kid is going to think, well, I don't want mom to think I'm bad. I want mom to love me, right? Because you need mom to love you, to provide shelter, to protect you. So I'm going to make sure I never make money so that mom will love me. And the thing is as an adult, you're thinking, well, that's silly, Liv. I know that's not true. Remember, what matters was the filing system, right? The coding, the operating system that you learned from the 0 to 2 and then also the 2 to 7. So I want you to think about it like you have very outdated iOS software. So your operating system that you learned, you're still operating on like iOS 5, right? It's really old. It's outdated. So it's not up to date with what you currently know to be true. And so let's say there's iOS 5 running on your phone, but you tried to run a current day app or current day programming, right? There wouldn't be a congruent, right? That operating system cannot run that new programming. It doesn't matter how hard you try to run that new program. That operating system is not built to run that program. It will not work. You have to upgrade that operating system. And I hope this analogy is really landing, because to me, it's a really good one for understanding why you can maybe do these external things, but why it doesn't stick, why it feels like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall, why it feels like it never integrates or it never lands, or you run in the same loops and patterns. It's because you haven't actually addressed that core operating system, that one that you formed when you were younger. All right, so once you start to untangle, right? So let's keep running with this analogy. When we think about your outdated operating system, right? iOS 5, if you will, and what are we on now? Maybe 15 or 16? You have to pull apart each layer of coding, right? So there might be a line of code in that operating system that says money is bad. There might be an operating system that says money, it has to be hard. You have to really work hard to make money. Maybe there's one that it can't be easy. Maybe there's one that says you have to choose love or money. Maybe think about all these different lines of code, right? So you have to go through every single line of code in that operating system to make sure your nervous system is on board. I love this. We're going to keep rolling with this analogy. And I don't know that much about technology, so you'll be able to understand this analogy. But let's say one line of coding is off. It's going to crash the whole system, right? If one line of coding is off, it's not going to work properly. So let's say you do 9 out of the 10 lines of code. If you're missing one line of code, it's still not going to work. You need all lines of code to be on board. You need the whole operating system to be upgraded, all lines of coding, everything to integrate seamlessly, and then it lands out of nowhere. Then it seems to shift overnight. It's not. It's just like you upgraded the core operating system and you changed all the lines of coding. So this is why it's important to always get down to the root, right? So I think a lot of people, when they're doing the subconscious work, they think, if I just close my eyes and I meditate and I say that I am wealthy, that's the subconscious work. No, the subconscious work is actually rewiring every single one of those lines of coding. That is how you get the change. Otherwise, there will always be that separation. Now, you might be thinking, well, Liv, how do I know when the lines of coding have changed? How will I know that I'm operating under the new operating system? Because your response to everything around you will change and you will receive synchronicities, feedback, money will flow in. You can see oh, okay, this is new. I can feel the difference because where I responded this way in the past, I'm now responding this way. Where I used to feel like this about money or this about this level of money, I no longer feel that anymore, right? You're not getting that somatic response. when we think about nervous system dysregulation, it's a very somatic response, right? You feel it in your chest, your stomach, your head goes into fear, your palms get sweaty. Like those are the symptoms that then disappear. When you're relaxed, when you are grounded, when you are neutral, you're kind of just chilling, right? So, and this is something interesting that I want to bring up. A lot of people think that, oh, when I'm excited, this is good. And I feel the excitement of already being there. Excitement is a hyper-arousal response. Excitement is a dysregulated response. We want grounded neutrality. You can be grateful and you can be excited, but excited doesn't have to be hyper-aroused. So I want you to think about when people are like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Or, oh my God, like this amazing thing happened, and you feel that rush in your nervous system. Do you notice how you don't feel neutral? Right, when those things happen? That is a signal to me that your system is actually going into hyperarousal. You are getting a high off of it. Now, we don't want hypoarousal, but we also don't want hyper. We want grounded neutrality. So if you were to freak out, if you'd be like, oh my God, okay, then we know we have some nervous system work to do. Right? We want grateful, but grounded and neutral. Let's give an example. If $100 came into your life right now, in this moment, you'd probably be grateful, but you wouldn't be like, oh my God, $100. This is so exciting. I'm freaking out. $100 came in. Like, you probably wouldn't do that. Would you do that with $100,000? Because what happens is when you do that, you set off nervous system alarm bells, right? The nervous system likes homeostasis. It likes to be at a thermostat. It likes to be at a certain level. So when you send the feedback to your nervous system, like, oh my God, this is something to freak out about, it goes, oh no, okay, we need to be aware. Something is happening. Something is different. Different means bad, right? Because remember, different is bad to the nervous system. Because anything that the nervous system cannot predict, it sets off alarm bells, it sets off danger. We do not want to start priming your nervous system for danger around money. We do not want it thinking that massive influx of money coming in is something to be alarmed about. It's something strange. It's something, oh my God. You want to be grounded and relaxed and anchored in it. And so I really want you to think about, all right, where does your nervous system respond? If you were to think about your response to money, do you get into that hyperarousal? Do you get into that freak out mode? Or are you grounded and neutral? You can be like, yeah, I could receive that amount and I'm grateful, but it's that grounded, it's that anchored gratitude. It's not the freaking out. Remember, the nervous system will always bring you back to homeostasis, to its thermostat. So let's give an analogy to make sure this really makes sense. Think about a thermostat in a room. And let's say it's set to 20 degrees. If you open up all the windows in the middle of winter and all this cold air starts to flood in, right? All the wind comes in, the system will kick on, right? The heating will kick on to bring it back to 20 degrees, right? It'll bring it back to that set point, which is good, right? Because if you have a set point of 20 degrees and quote unquote something happens, right, in life, your thermostat will kick on to get you back to that baseline level of wealth, right? It'll get you back up to 20 degrees. However, you open up all the doors and all this warmth floods in, what will the system do? Let's say all this stuff flows in and it raises to 25 degrees. What the thermostat will do is it will kick in to bring it back down to 20 degrees. This is very important, right? Because when you have that nervous system dysregulation, you either go lower and then you go up, but then you go high and you get this up and down, right? It's this roller coaster with money. It's this roller coaster with wealth. And when we think about being a match for wealth, right, this is kind of like the neuroscience behind it. You need to raise the thermostat set point, not just open the windows, have the money be like, oh my God, it's coming in, but now it's 25 degrees and your system's going to bring it down to what it believes to be safe, what it believes to be your normal. What a lot of people do is they focus on bringing the heat. Okay, let's just get the heat in. Let's just open all the windows, get as much heat as we can. but they don't try to actually raise the set point of their nervous system to calibrate it up so that it starts to have a new baseline temperature. When you rewire your nervous system, what you do is you actually change that set point so that the baseline then goes from 20 to 25, 25 to 30. So then more comes in and it's like, oh, this feels natural. This feels neutral. I don't need to bring it back down. I don't need to raise it back up. So this is what I really want you to focus on, is rewiring this part. Because when there's a big degree, right, of separation, you will always be brought down to your set point. So let's kind of go into this separation, because separation is a big, big thing that keeps you from being a match to wealth. Right? Wealth is not something to go searching for when it's something that you already are. I really want you to let that land. Wealth is not something to go searching for when it's something that you already are. But when you have that separation, you've placed that money, that wealth, that level of it outside of you. And you can feel that gap. You can feel that you're here and it's there. This creates that problem, right? When we think even about the thermostat, there's a big gap. We want to try to collapse that gap by dissolving any kind of separation. And actually, I have a very powerful activation around dissolving separation that we're going to link in the show notes. It's free. It is incredible. One of my clients did it, and I think it was like the next day or within 2 days, 25K dropped in out of nowhere because she dissolved separation in this. So I really want you to get honest with yourself about, have you placed this level of wealth, this level of money as something outside of you? And you'll know it's outside of you because you will feel like it is there and it is not here. Now, this is different than feeling the feelings of it's already being here, right? The classic advice that everyone has heard over the years. This is actually feeling no degree of separation. So when it comes to separation, you are either separate or you're not, right? And so yes, it can feel less separate from you, can feel closer, but it's still separate until it's not. So it's kind of like being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You can't just be a little bit pregnant. You can be, so it's separate, it might be getting closer, but it's separate, it is still outside of you until you bring it internal. And as soon as you bring it internal, that's when it comes into your reality. That's how things happen instantaneously. That's why things come out of nowhere. It's not out of nowhere, it's because you removed any separation from it. So what this separation does, right, is it causes lack. It causes you to feel the lack of something there. It even causes you to even want something that's outside of you. Now, what most people do, right, when they are trying to dissolve separation is they try to do more, right? You're operating in that Newtonian model of cause and effect. Well, if I just do more, I'm trying to cause the effect of more money. If I just keep going and keep pushing and keep forcing, well, eventually it will get there. And that's true. You will get some results that way. It's not that that doesn't work. But it is not the level of result that is available to you now, right? It is an outdated model. It is like iOS 7. It's outdated. And what happens is with the separation, you're not only separating yourself from that thing, but chances are you've also created some limitations. You've created some beliefs around time. You think, well, maybe that's a year out. Well, that's 5 years out. That's 10 years out. That's 50 years out. Why? Because that doesn't actually have to be true. But when you're operating in that Newtonian model of cause and effect, you're going to feel like, A, it's separate from you, but also, oh, it takes X amount of time to get there. Because you feel that separation. When you switch instead into like the quantum model, right, into the receiving zone, you're no longer operating on that same operating system. So I really want you to think about, what system are you operating under, right? Are you operating under the coding that you need to do to cause an effect? Or are you operating in that like quantum zone, receiving zone kind of frequency where it's already there. One is a much faster way to get there. One is a lot slower. One of them has a lot of like hard work, hard like pushing. And that doesn't mean like you don't have to work, you don't do things, but it's not that like I have to grind, I have to push, I have to hustle. Like you actually get to decide to like apply the cheat codes to the game and play a whole different game. So when you're focused, right, on being in that receiving zone, when you're focused on being inside the quantum, and again, you'll know, you can feel the difference when you are doing something in life to try to get an outcome versus allowing an outcome in, right? And that's the time where like magic and the miracles and synchronicities come in. So I want you to think about when it comes to receiving, where are you trying to get a result? Where are you caught up in the how? Where are you needing to know how it's going to happen? Right? Where are you then creating that separation that it's something outside of you? And then, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z. And if I get it, then that will get me that result. Because what happens is when you get very attached to the outcome, when you get, okay, this is how it has to happen, right? When you're attached to the outcome, nose is itchy. Every time my nose gets itchy, you know we're getting good stuff. When you're attached to the outcome and you're attached to when and how it has to happen, you know, oh, I'm going back into cause and effect. We're going to refocus. We're going to shift out of that mode. Because that's not the level of ease, right? And if you're in my world, you are all about ease. Ease comes from playing in the receiving zone, not the cause and effect zone. When you move into that quantum, right, into the receiving zone, you are no longer focused on your 3D reality. You are not focused on what you can see, what you can smell, when you can taste, when you can touch. And so then you're not reacting to it. But what happens is that most people are in constant reaction mode to what's around them. They're constantly reacting to what they see, what they smell, what they taste, what they touch. And that takes you out of the receiving zone and puts you back into that Newtonian model, back into cause and effect. Because you say, well, Liv, I'm seeing this, so this is what must be true. Right? This is what I'm experiencing. This is what my world is showing me. You react to that. Then you feel separate from it again. Oh, this is what the world is showing me. This is what the bank account's showing me. This is what this is showing me. You react to it. We get the nervous system response, the somatic response. Then you start making all types of ideas about it, all types of limitations and stories. You start offering up resistance. You then rewire that into your system because you've caused that separation once again. Then all of that operating system that's outdated from when you were 0 to 2 and 2 to 7 be like, yep, this is on track. We believe this about money. This is true. And you start to seek out confirmation of all of those outdated files. You start to seek it out in your reality and you're going to come and tell me, see, Liv, it's true. See, I told you. I told you it was hard. I told you it was this. I told you here is the feedback. Here is what happened in my life, in my reality. And I will tell you, no, it is because you are responding to that you are then affirming it to be true. And that is why you are then experiencing it again. Because when you stop focusing on your 3D reality, that is when it changes. But when you are living in reaction to it and you are focused on it, it will not change. You have to actually get out ahead of it. And that's what changes. But so often, like the cause and effect, you respond to what currently is as if that is truth. But it is just an illusion. It is just a projection of the hologram. You think, oh, this chair is here. I can feel it, Liv, the chair is here. And I will tell you, no, the particles in it are just moving so fast that your brain believes it to be there. But you have the power to have something different. But it requires you, again, rewiring your system to remove all of that old coding, dissolving any separation between you and it so that it no longer feels outside of you. And then you not responding to that current reality and having that throw you back into the cause and effect. If you continue taking everything you see in life as true, everything that you can see, smell, taste, and touch as truth, as what it is, you will never get out ahead of it. You might get trapped in that loop for decades. Dissolving any separation of time, any separation that it is outside of you. Because it is actually impossible to attract, to receive something that is outside of you. Okay, you're going to think about like you're a horse and there's a carrot dangling in front of you. You ever see those things? They're like getting the horse to move and they dangle something in front of it. Does the horse actually ever get the carrot? Maybe at the end, if the person gets off and like takes the carrot and feeds it. But if the horse keeps walking, does it actually ever get the carrot? No. When you cause separation between you and that level of wealth, will you actually ever get it? No. You have to remove that separation. You cannot receive something that is outside of you. So I even want you to think about, because a lot of the language when it comes to manifest, and I prefer the word creation over manifest, but when it comes to manifesting, it's like, oh, I'm attracting it to me. I'm attracting. Attract doesn't actually mean something is outside of you. So if you're using the word attract, like you believe I have to attract something like it is there and I am here, you will never attract it. It's actually coming through you. So it's not like this direction. If you're on the YouTube video, you can see my hands. I'm moving my hand towards me. It's actually going out of you. Like you are projection. So if you were the projector and your whole life was a movie screen, I want you to think about like the center light could be in your chest, in your heart. That is what you're seeing. So if you're the projector, what is it that you're projecting out? It's not coming from outside of you. It's nothing separate from you. It's coming through you as you. There's no separation. So when you change that, again, by changing all the files, everything we've been talking about in this episode so far, you dissolve any separation and then boom, it comes in. But it's not out of nowhere. It's because you removed all of that resistance that was causing you not to be aware of it. It is not that it's not there right now. It is simply invisible to you because it is just something you cannot see. Right? Like we spoke about in the beginning, it becomes that operating system. That operating system has lenses on it. So if you've ever put like different colored lenses on, like let's say you put a red lens on, like red colored glasses, it changes what you see. If you put on a different color, it changes what you see. So every kind of lens you put on in your nervous system, in your wiring, changes what you see. And this is why two people can be in the exact same space, can be the exact same world, city, can be the exact same restaurant, exact same table, and have a completely different experience of life. Their lenses are different. So all we have to do is change the lens, which is fantastic. So with all of this, what happens is when you dissolve all the separation, right, you get into that quantum mode, that receiving zone. That's where you get to relax to receive. And so, yes, it can be like you get to relax, you get to chill out and like sit down and chill, but it's an internal relaxed. I want you to think about relaxing to receive as an internal process, not necessarily like you sitting on the couch with like your feet up, like I'm chilling, I'm relaxing, and then it comes. Because when most people think like I need to surrender, like I need to relax to receive, which is a lot of what we hear, you're sitting relaxing, but what is your internal state doing? You can sit down and chill and lay by the pool and be relaxed, but if your internal state is not actually relaxed, your subconscious, right, which is 95% of the show, the 5% of you is like, yes, I'm chilling, I'm relaxing. The 95% is like, no, because X, Y, Z, and et cetera, all those lines of coding. That is what it really means to relax to receive. That is the only time you get into that quantum, that receiving zone, is when your system actually feels relaxed. So just like you don't want to be anxious or avoidant with men, you don't want to be anxious or avoidant when it comes to money. So if you are clingy, if you are attached, if you have trouble flowing money out, or if you're avoidant with it, right? When we think about a nervous system, there's different responses. We have a fight response, we have a flight, we have a freeze, and we have a fawn, right? So the fight, really like the hyper arousal, the aggression when it comes to money, the over controlling, right? The flight, running away from it, the freeze, feeling paralyzed, the fawn, right? The people pleasing, the avoidance. We can have different responses, but none of those responses are relaxed. And so this is why it doesn't matter if you're sitting relaxed, like I'm relaxing on the couch, but then as soon as you get up and you check your bank account, you go into a nervous system. You go into freak out, or you avoid looking at it altogether. You avoid looking at how you're responding. And the funny thing is that there's so many little incongruencies. So people often think like, oh, if it's not a giant nervous system response and I'm not freaking out and crying or freaking out like it's this huge thing, that I'm not having a nervous system response. I want you to think, because this is where things really start to stack and you'll start to see all the little incongruencies in your day and how you respond to it. All the little ways you respond to money. All the little ways you respond to wealth, because this is what's really going to show you your nervous system. So it may be you're okay looking at your bank account, but how do you feel if something is like $5 more on the menu? Do you like get weird and contract? Do you get weird and contract of like, oh, I'm going to book, I don't know, the cheaper flight that's $100 cheaper that has like, I don't know, 3,000 layovers and like the layover 17 hours and it's overnight and blah, blah, blah. Well, you're trying to become a match for wealth, but that version of you is not contracting over $100. It's not looking to save $100. And so it's not just like the huge things. It's a lot of these little ways that you behave with it that may not be like a huge somatic response, but it gives you those little signals like, oh, okay, I can see where I'm in that mode with money. And I can see how that is not a match, right? How that is not going to raise my set point. Because when you're relaxed with money, you trust money to move for you. You trust yourself with money. You know that it's going to come back. You don't like let those little things make you feel some type of way about money. You don't go to the grocery store and freak out that the almond milk you like is $1 more than it used to be. Right? None of these things kind of get under your way because your value of it, your wealth, like you're holding that state of wealth. But if you notice you get shifted into separation, into lack, that's your work. And that's where your nervous system needs to be rewired. And it's so interesting because people often think, well, when I have that level of money, I won't behave that way anymore. And let me tell you, as someone who has worked with people making anywhere from like 5K months, 10K months to like 100K plus months, like 8-figure entrepreneurs, you'd be surprised at the little micro behaviors when it comes to nervous system and money and wealth and the ways they behave and the ways you respond to money. Because when you start to clean that up, right, you dissolve that separation, you get into the quantum, you get into the receiving mode, that's when you really become a match. And that's when you don't have to try, right? That's when we're not operating in that Newtonian cause and effect model. And this is obviously the place everyone wants to get to. Like everyone's like, I want it to flow. I want it to feel easy. I don't want there to be resistance. But if you're not cleaning all these places up and instead you're focused on, well, if I just journal enough times, if I just script it out that I'm a millionaire enough times, it will be, I will tell you that it is your behavior of your nervous system response to money, that other, 23 hours and 50 minutes of your time. What most people miss, right, is this tension in their nervous system. When they are just feeling the feelings, what you do is you compound that separation. Because if you are still feeling any degree of separation, any degree of it is there and not here, any feelings of lack, any feelings of I hope and not certainty, when you close your eyes and like feel the feelings, you are compounding lack, you are compounding separation. Because the truth is deep down, you feel separation. So it is no use. You're going to feel like you're throwing spaghetti on the wall, hoping it's going to stick. And then it doesn't stick and you wonder why. Because your nervous system and who you are being subconsciously, that 95% has not caught up with that 5%. So unless it's fully on board, it's kind of a moot point. Until you get to that knowing and certainty, there's no point amplifying the feelings. I guarantee you've tried this before because this is the classic advice. If you sit there and you just feel the excitement and you ramp it up and you close your eyes and you really feel it, you can smell it and taste it and touch it and feel it. But if there are energetic entanglements, any separation, fear, guilt, lack, shame, anything that's still tied, from when you were 0 to 2 and 2 to 7, you are just compounding that instead. This is the work that most people miss. But the good news is once you do this work, once you rewire that, all the other stuff you do works like wildfire, and then technically everything works, but then technically you don't need to do it at all because there's no separation. And so this is funny because people will ask me, well, what kind of manifestation rituals or practices that you do? Or like, it's the full moon, like what should I do? Or it's this thing, like what should I do? And like you can do things, but if you're not feeling a frequency of certainty, if you're not feeling like you know it's already there, I'd focus on that first, then doing some sort of magical incantation or ritual in the hopes that it's going to get you there, because you are doing that from a place of separation. You are doing that from a place of lack. You are doing that not from a state of wholeness, not from a state that it's already here. You are doing that hoping to get an outcome, hoping to cause an effect, and you are back into that Newtonian model. Remember, when you are in that quantum, when you are in that receiving zone, you are that projector. It comes through you as you, and then you will laugh, and then you will delight in it, and then you will come back, and you will tell me, you will come back and be like, Liv, I get it. I finally get what you were talking about. I know exactly what you mean. Because this is what my clients will come and say to me, like, Liv, I get you. I'll get messages on Telegram like, Liv, I'm in the quantum. Like, I get it. Like, everything is dropping in out of nowhere. I'm in the quantum. And it makes me so happy because you finally cracked the code. You realize what it means to actually be the creator of reality, where you're not manifesting anything that's outside of you. You don't have to try to attract. You're not like doing any of that. You simply are. And as a result, your world rearranges around you at rapid speed. And so I want to bring in kind of a couple last points to really tie this together, because one of the last little frequencies that I notice in a lot of people is they're in a waiting frequency. And so anytime you are in that waiting frequency, you are taking yourself out of the receiving zone. Right? When you think about, oh, I'm waiting for that to happen for me to feel a certain way. I'm waiting for this to happen in order to do that. You're back to the cause and effect. You're back to the Newtonian. Your job, your one and only job, is to dissolve resistance in your nervous system so that you can get into the quantum, get into the receiving zone. I want you to catch the places where you are in waiting frequency, waiting for something outside you to change. If you are waiting for something else outside to change you or to change your ability, you will be waiting a long time. You're back to that carrot in front of the horse. We're cutting that end. This ends now. Now that you've heard this episode, you're never going to be operating under that again. And when you dissolve that resistance, you get in your receiving zone and you stay there for as long as you can until that becomes your default. And then you start to exist in a state of wholeness, where there is like actually nothing that you want. There is no wanting for something outside of you because you don't feel that separation. You are in a state of wholeness and you live in that profound joy and you delight in everything because you do not feel separate from anything. And that is the most magical place to be. Because when it comes to being a match for wealth, it is not just about the wealth and money that comes in. It is about your experience of it. Because you can have money come in and have a completely different experience if you feel like it's going to go away, if you feel like this may not last, if you feel like you don't know when the next chunk is going to come from, if you feel like there's all these dysregulated responses, completely different than feeling like you're in that receiving zone. You are not separate, you are locked in, and you are in that state of wholeness where you are no one, you are no thing, and there's nothing that you need. That is how you truly not only build wealth, but you become a match for it on repeat. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know how this landed for you. Send me a message over on Instagram. I cannot wait to hear, and we will see you in the next episode.